Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Everybody shout! Come on now, sing out! It's time for the ghoulies get together.
Hello everybody, welcome back. It's week 2 on these figures. How was your week? I had a fine bit of time off. Went up and visited some family, people I hadn't seen in 120 years. So that was good. But now we're back at it. And I've got the ghoulies right where I left them. Got them right where I want them. And this week we're going to be working on a nice base for them. And we're going to be picking up the our shields and working with Wonder Woman. And I have got this, I think I've got this shoulder where I want it. This pit needed a little bit more puttying in the pit. And some of the forearms here needed to have some more putty put on them. But that's coming along slowly. The legs, the seam on the legs, it's taking forever. I'm sanding, and I'm trying to be very gentle with the sand. Too much. I don't want to sand too much away, but I want to be able to get rid of that shadow line of that seam. And it could be, you know, a lot of that could be psychological. I know where that seam is. Some stranger looking at that might not know to look for the seam. So I just have to put some flesh tone on it and see if it disappears, and trust that nobody else will notice it either. But yeah, that's we're just kind of picking everything back up and seeing where I left it, and we're going to go from there. I'm going to go and get a wooden base for the ghoulies. I think the first thing I want to do is pose them in such a way that they take up a minimum amount of space on a stand, so that I can fit them on a shelf somewhat succinctly, but also to get an idea how big a piece of wood I need to find. Alrighty, so I did some scrounging in my wood pile and found this piece of 1/2 inch particle board that I can use for my base for my ghoulies. And I went out and picked up a bag of what we used to call popsicle sticks. They're now wooden craft sticks. And I'm going to lay those down like floorboards. I'm going to chop I got to chop the edges off them to make them flat. But what we're going to do is make like an old stained up floor. And then I'm going to make a backdrop here that I can make look like dungeon walls with heavy bricks and blocks. And I think I'll end up carving those out of foam. But and I'll put a little plaque here that says Groovy Goolies, just in case the youngsters don't know what these are. So let's get started with that. Let's remove the said ghoulies from said base, and we'll get started on laying these planks down. Okay, I'm a little over halfway done, and I seriously underestimated the amount of full-sized planks I was going to need. So I have to go out and cut up some more. Now these grout lines or joint lines aren't clean, they aren't straight, they are messy. But come on now, we're not HGTV here, we're not laying high pressed floor. This should be a haunted house. Not only that, a cartoon haunted house. So yeah, these are probably a little cleaner than they really ought to be, but I think it's looking good. All I need to do is finish off this side. Okay, so the floor is finished now, or it's all the planks are laid down. So I just need to get a big, heavy, flat weight to put on this so that I can, actually I can probably just turn this upside down. I don't think anything is going to leak out of the top. But I can just turn it over like this and then put some weight on it to hold all the pieces down. And then I'll just trim those off. I have to back up to get the whole thing in camera, but that's kind of the idea I'm looking at. Got the floor drying, then this will be the stone wall behind. It'll probably be in a light grayish purple, and the sign in front with the logo on it. That sign might be a little smaller, but that's kind of the setup I'm going for. I'll try to do something interesting on those walls, maybe put a fake portrait or something up, but I don't want to detract too much from the the ghoulies themselves. Morning, welcome back. It's Tuesday, and I've got a quiet minute here. It's been one of those days already, and it promises to look that way for the rest of the day. Here we can see the floor that I worked on yesterday. It has had time to dry. I was mocking up I was mocking the walls, and now I'm going to cut them out of the permanent material, which is this 1/8 inch thick Trovasil. And I'm looking at the backgrounds and what kind of a background I'm going to do. It's going to be something like this. You saw me mock that up yesterday, I hope. But the finish on it is going to be more like dungeon walls. Now, there have been, well, let's go over to let's go to the magic talking machine. Okay, this is the type of wall I'm looking at. Now, this being a Filmation cartoon, they used a lot of repeating walls, and then a lot of repeating backgrounds, almost like Hanna-Barbera did. What I'm looking for is a wall that's got a dungeon wall, but it's only a few of the bricks are called out. Now, there's different ones. Sometimes they're very impressionistic backgrounds. Sometimes they're ritzy, finished woodwork backgrounds, like like you'd have in an old fancy house. And this is the kind of look I'm going for. This is where more bricks, you see more of them are standardized and squared off, and almost all of them are filled in. Here you have them more rounded with more irregular gaps around it. I think something like this is more appealing to me. I just don't know if it's going to be blue. They've got all different colors. Here we go, more of that same. See what happens when Drac is against the blue, though. He has a tendency to disappear. So I think we want to go with a different color for the... I'm going to put all the characters on the stand and see what color would be a good contrast to all of them. Here is more of just a simple impressionistic watercolor background. This is more of the brown. Well, obviously you can see it's brown, but here we have more of the wooden floor, which is sometimes they're wooden, sometimes they are concrete, sometimes they are stone, cobblestone, just like the walls. Since I've already gone with the brown floor, we can assume that that's what I'm going to do for the floor. Again, we're coming back. Let me close out of these and see if I can find a better example. No, that's it. Here we are on YouTube, and this is more of the same. Well, look at that. See, that's more of the brick wall with the block wall with a couple, but you see there's no empty space between it. What I like are the more impressionistic walls. Okay, so transferring those ideas to here, I'm going to cut out an irregular shape, and then we're going to put some foam blocks on here, and we might do something like this where you spell out, one or two blocks here and there, but you don't fill in every stinking little bit. And I'm wondering whether I want to go with the squared off blocks, or whether I want to go with the big round, like the irregularly shaped, sort of like the like fieldstone look. But I think what I'd like to do is, if I'm going to cut this irregular, then these need to be squared off. If I do this very irregular, and then I put blobby irregular rocks in there, then it's just going to look too organic, too unformed. So this way I can not only are these easier to cut, but I can get my jollies out of cutting the wall to an irregular shape and leave the bricks sort of like this. Now I'm going to try a test case with a bit of the same material, and I'm going to glue some of these down to it. I'm going to try a couple of test cases with finish to see what kind of finish, because I think that trunk paint is going to give me a good stone / dungeon wall texture, and then I can paint a color over top of that. Okay, we're doing a quick lighting test here just to see how the coloring works, and I think this is going to be fine. What we've got, I wanted to make sure Frankie was going to stand out from the back wall, and I wanted to make sure that Drac, because he's got that color of blue in him, that was going to stand out from the back wall. And so what we've ended up with is the textured paint over top of some foam with a light blue wall, and I think I'll go in and maybe spray a little bit of color, just a darker blue, just to call out the tones of the stone tones, the tones of the stones. So now that I've got all of that sussed out, I can cut the shapes of the walls and get those lined up. Okay, coming down to the end of the day, it's been one of those weird, got 19 different things going on at the same time day, but I have got to get a one last primer coat on Wonder Woman's skin before I start top coating. I think I've got all the seams wrestled down to a manageable level, and what I'm going to do is just pop one last coat. Now the walls for the ghoulies is going very well. As a matter of fact, that's what ended up taking up a good chunk of the day. Got those cut out, got the foam blocks put in for the extra bricks. I got the texture paint over top of that, and the blue color of the main walls on top of that. That's all drying. Had a little storm blow up this afternoon, so that kind of put a kibosh on doing too much stuff outdoors. But what I need to do at this point here is just make sure that these seams are going to disappear. And I'm digging that. And I'm just using the Tamiya flat flesh as my primer coat. And then I'll use some of those Vallejos that I've got that I used on the Sucker Punch gals. I'll use those for the top coats. That's looking pretty good. I think that'll do for that leg. Give me a leg to stand on here. We'll prop that up there. This one, the seams sanded out pretty easily. I'm just giving it a coat to make sure that it's evened up with the other one. Okay, that's nice and evened. Now, I'm kind of curious about adding the head, because there's going to be that last little seam at the neck. And we're going to see how much of a problem that's going to be. Oh, the good news is that armpit seems to have cleaned up nicely. Still got something going on the inside of her forearm there. As I said, I'm not worried about the back there, because we've got a hair. Her hair comes down, and that makes a natural seam there. Okay, we're going to let this dry and see if we've got any seams wanting to poke their way back out through. So good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, and work is continuing on the backdrop for the Groovy Goolies. Now, I've got the new stones painted, and they may be a little bit too colorful. I'll have to see. But by the time you put them like this, and you put the rest of the characters in front of them, I think they will disappear into the background as they should. It shouldn't be a case of the background being as noticeable or as prevalent as the characters in front of it, unless you're doing a diorama where the whole thing is a part of the presentation. This is just a backdrop, so I don't want it to steal any thunder from the characters in front of it, but I did want it to give a nice contrast to the colors of the characters in front of it. So that's why I was careful to keep the blue away from where Frankie is going to be, say, or I'm sorry, the blue where Drac is going to be over in here. Actually, I think Bella's going to be over in here. Drac is going to be over here, so we need to keep the blues and the colors and the characters away from the colors in the background. But by the time you do something like that, I think it's more noticeable now that when this is all you see than it's going to be once we get into putting the characters in front. It's what I'm trying to say in my long-winded way. It's early in the morning. Well, it's morning, and my speech centers aren't quite there yet. So the next thing to do really is to go ahead and use this reinforcing piece of cardboard corner piece so that I can epoxy these two pieces together just like this and give them a nice support. Then I can attach the whole thing to the base. Okay, I'm just epoxying the long side of the base on there now, or the backdrop. So the first side has dried, cured up, and I'm doing the back side, and then we'll be able to attach all of this to the wooden base. And here's how she looks all set up. Now what I need to do is epoxy the base to the walls. So I'm just going to put a thin coat of epoxy on there and tape it down, and that'll be a good thing to be setting up while I go run an errand or two. Alrighty, it's time to start putting the figures in place. I just had a last minute burst of inspiration to do a 3D printed name plaque for right here that will say Groovy Goolies on it. So those are printing in the background. So that's what you're hearing the printer do. So I'm going to start. I'm going to get the figures out. I'm going to see where they place them. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I had better paint this edge here black, because I don't want to be monkeying around with it once I've got the figures down. And I think I also need to do the felting on the back side. I don't know whether I should. I think felting it will be. It'll give me a prettier look. I was thinking of just painting it with some black paint, but I can take this tape off now since it's all set up. But I think that felting it will be more. It's actually more democratic that way, because if I ever put this on a table at a show, then the person that's backed up against me on this side will have a nice black backdrop. Okay, like I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by a detail that I hadn't quite figured out. It is time to put the figures in. I've got the back all blacked up and looking nice. So we'll start with Frank in the back. I don't want to push him too far back, but I think he wants to be something like that. So I'm going to put a wee bit of epoxy on his toes, on his feet, and we're just going to glue him down, and we're going to proceed like that until we run out of figures. Alright, so give a cheer. The gang's all here. Time for the ghoulie get together. Everybody's in. I'm just going to let that cure. The epoxy on their toes. Epoxy on your house. Epoxy on your toes, and that's keeping everything glued down. I just need to go around now that I can see what is what exactly. I can go around and do some final touch-ups, like spots where because of excessive handling I've worn paint off of some tips of the hair there. There was one other spot on Drac's cape. Now that Drac is in place, I can paint some black on that cape. But again, it was important for me that blue not blend too closely with what's going on the wall behind him. So I think we're in good shape for all of this, and that's where we'll leave it for today. Alrighty, I'm just finishing up for today. I went ahead and put some epoxy sculpt underneath Wolfie's feet. I had to block him up because of the way he's balanced, and the truth of it is I printed his head solid, which put a lot of weight out towards the front. I always print the head solid because that's where the character is. You don't want that piece to deform, and sometimes if you print something hollow, you run the risk of it deforming a little bit. So I printed up solid, and that put a lot of weight that wanted to topple out over his toes. So this way I can, I glued him in place, and then I kind of packed some epoxy sculpt up underneath the fronts of his flip-flops there, and we're going to let that dry, and then tomorrow I come back and paint those yellow. So he'll have a bit of a platform shoe. And I can see that my printer has just finished printing. Well, let's see. The printer has just finished printing the name plaques. Now I always print two. You know, I say instead of printing just one. I don't want to leave these open because the afternoon sun might come in and wreak some havoc on this resin. But as you can see from underneath, they do say Groovy Goolies on them. So I got some fun plans for those ahead. Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday. It's the gateway to the weekend, and we are all but finished with these Groovy Goolies setup. Now, there's one last bit that I had a brainstorm to think about last night, and that involves the nameplate. So I'm printing out some. Well, I'm going to wait to see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to tell you. If it does work, then you'll know. That's just how cagey I want it to be. But overnight, the epoxy sculpt has hardened. I can now paint up the sandals on the bottom of Wolfie, so that those will be hopefully hidden and disguised. And that pretty much finishes 95% of the remaining stand. Couple little touches here. I think I'm going to put a gloss on Wolfie's nose, even though these are cartoon characters. You wouldn't necessarily see the difference between a flat and a gloss finish. But since I went ahead and glossed Bella's dress, then I think we've already, that ship has sailed. I think we're already past that. So let me put a little bit of gloss on his nose and fix his shoes while I'm waiting for what's in the printer. I've got another 2 hours before that finishes, and then we'll see where that goes. And that leaves us today and tomorrow to work on Wonder Woman, and that should be enough to finish. Okay, while the printing is finishing up, I drug out Wonder Woman and did a couple of things. One thing. Firstly, I took some of the Comart iridescent, or pearlescent, and I just wanted to give her pants and her top just a little bit of that, so that they look more like satin shiny clothing, and that'll give more of a texture break or a tone break between that and the flatness of the skin tones. Now the boots I decided not to do that with, because the boots would be more of a vinyl or a leather, so I can do that with a simple gloss coat or a satin coat after I finish painting those. But I really thought that would give a shine, a satin a bit, and then of course we're going to put stars on theirs, so that's going to break that up a bit. And I need to paint in obviously the gold of the eagle. I'm looking at the I know the instructions say one thing. What do the instructions say? The instructions say to make the emblem and lasso gold, and the let's see, the belt is a white gold, and yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking of doing. More of a yellow gold on the eagle and on the trim of the belt, and the belt itself would be a white gold like the tiara. And I think the bracelets need to be more of a silver, maybe a white gold or a silver on that. So and getting these guys ready to paint is the next step. Okay, so for the last trick tonight, I painted the white stripes on the front of her boots. Now, I had tried to make some sort of masking arrangement, either making a positive mask or a negative mask, but I have to tell you that there are so many little bumps and creases and changes of direction there that I just, took a deep breath and painted it on with a very fine brush. Painted it freehand. Sometimes paint brushing is all you can do. But these are ready. I'm ready to do the flesh painting on her legs. I've got the gold painted on her bodice. Now, I have not put the yellow gold on because I need to paint the flesh tones, and then I'll touch those up. And then really all that's left is the face. So wish me luck. That's all tomorrow's work right there. Hello, good people. It's Friday. It's the last work day of the week. And Wonder Woman is looking a bit like a fembot laid out here with no face on her head. And I'm getting ready to paint the flesh today. And before I finish that up, which would be the last bit really on, I say last bit, like it's, the last thing you have to do is, build a house. The last thing you have to do is paint the flesh. Well, before I finish that up, I wanted to show you the last bit that I made for the Ghoulies base, and that is this nice little name plaque. Now, I've got some hats I've sculpted on these skulls, and I'm waiting for that epoxy sculpt to cure before I paint those. But I wanted to show you that I put a little light, flickering candle light in the middle skull there. So that will be added to the front of the Ghoulies base, and then it will be a finished thing. So we're gonna let those hats cure for a bit, and then we'll finish up the day by attaching those. So the last thing really that we need to do on the lovely Linda Carter Wonder Woman figure is to paint the flesh. And if I've learned anything from the Sucker Punch figures, it was less is more. Don't try to sweat every little blemish and freckle and all of that. So what I've got is a couple of good colors that I think make a nice match. We're going to start with this tan earth, which is a little sunburnt. It's a little darker, but this was, early mid 70s when the era of Jiggle TV, where the women were voluptuous and well tanned. So we will, plus she's Amazonian, so we'll take that as as permission to make her look maybe perhaps a little more tan than certainly more than Baby Doll, but in the Sucker Punch family of skin color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this tan earth color and use that as sort of a pre-shade, use that as a darker, and then we'll go over top of that with the skin tone, Modeler skin tone, which will give me my highlights. Alrighty, working on the ever challenging head, face / part, and working on the hair here a bit, and I'm trying to throw some dimension and some contrast in, because outside of comic books, no one ever really has completely black hair. Not to inadvertently offend some ethnic groups, but I mean, you don't really see black hair. So, and even on this box, which is what I'm using for my reference, you can see that there are brown highlights and even into some light brown highlights. So that's what I've added here, just to give it a little bit more dimension. I think I will put a dark, perhaps a black wash over that after it's had a chance to dry. I've also worked on the face a bit. Now, she doesn't look very happy, so I'm going to worry about that. I need to put some sparkle in her eyes and on her lips, and that'll help with the high gloss. But I think she needs a little bit of rosy on her cheeks, again, to go with the example that I'm using. I think I need to do something to just give her a little bit of oomph there. I'm going to do a little darkening around her eye makeup. What I don't like about this kit is how hard you have to press that face in to the head. So I think what I'm going to do, you really have to jam that on there to get it to fit. I know you perhaps are are supposed to paint it already in place, but I found it easier to handle outside of painting it. So I think what I'm going to do is nip those pins, because I think there's plenty enough area around the around the edge here that I don't think I need these long pins to keep it in place, and that will give me a little bit more lenience when it comes time to placing it. I won't have to push it in so much. So we're just going to snip those pins, and then we can lay her face down a lot easier. Now this is the only seam that I am really worried about right now, is the seam that goes between her neck and the top of her chest. Now I have been painting the skin on here, and again, I'm looking at it, I'm walking away, because this is the Vallejo paint that sometimes will go on a little heavier than you think it's going on, and I can already see where I might want to lighten some of that up. And the putty that I had thought I had smoothed out under her armpit is not showing up smooth, so there's that to worry about. So, I mean, we'll get this done. We'll get this done today. That's not really a problem. I just want to make sure that I'm happy as all get out with my colors before I put a clear finish over this. This will get a satin finish for all of it, and then I'll put the stars down, and then I'll see if I need to go ahead with a flat finish on the skin. Or conversely, I could put a flat finish over everything and then go in with a semi or satin finish over the costume. So I'm going to do just another little bit of sanding on that armpit, see if I can smooth that out. Okay, so I've encountered a nastiness. Well, a bigger nastiness than I was anticipating, and that is the seam between her neck and her torso. I was hoping that would all but disappear. That's a nasty seam. So before I do any more painting or blending up in here, I need to put some putty and attach that head and kind of get it done. Now, you can see I worked on the armpit a bit. That's got a base coat on it. That's a whole lot of neck. Man, that's a long-necked woman. Necked woman, not naked. You can see the example here. I think it's a little exaggerated, but it is what it is. So what I need to do is set down some, I guess set that in a bed of putty and then glue it down, and kind of let it sit for a while, because we're going to have to blend that in before we can do any more painting. Okay, I've got the head on and I've got it puttied up, and I sure do wish that the character had worn some sort of necklace of some sort, because then they could have made a much more logical break there, and we wouldn't have to deal with this the way it is. But that's what it is. So that's going to dry, and then I'm going to sand it down. Well, it's the usual Friday afternoon race to the finish, but I got to tell you, I'm happy with where Wonder Woman is, but if anybody had stuck me up and told me how many times I would be painting and repainting the same places over and over, I would have slapped them silly and gone home. Well, I'm already home, but I mean, I've had to paint something, and then I will paint the thing next to it, and I'll end up slopping paint, and I have to go back and touch something up, which causes another round of going around everything else up and touching it. And it's like, I have painted everything at least 5 times, including the eyes, which I've painted twice. But I think we are to a happy place. The last thing to do now is to glue on the legs, and then once the legs are glued on, I can finally get around to putting the stars on her trousers. So then after the stars are on, then I could put the lasso on, because the lasso overlaps some of the stars. And then the last thing will be to put the little ricochet thingies on her wrists. So let's get these legs ready. That leg goes there. I'm trying to figure out where the best area to glue is without slopping glue everywhere, because that would just be the last straw that I would end up having to touch up something again because of the getting glue everywhere. Let's put the glue on the pants and not on the plastic of the leg, and see if that isn't going to give us a happier result. Okay, is this on camera? Now, I've painted her hair more times than I can tell you, and I will still probably go back and dry brush in a highlight pass. I would end up putting in too much brown or too much of a white almost, and it would make it look too streaky. Okay, so we're going to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and paint up the other one while I'm at it. I have a feeling this is something that's going to want to be done once. And I don't want the blue paint to come off on her legs. So okay, standing up good. Let me put her on her base at least temporarily. The base I haven't spent too much time on at all at this point, because it's just that logo, and I think I can hand paint some of that in. As a matter of fact, I think I want to try to do that now while she's standing on it. That might be a little riskier than you think, but we'll find out. Okay, we're closing up on the end of the day, and I really want to get finished. Now, the base of this I am never going to get finished this week because the yellow and the white paint are going to need at least another coat, and I just don't have time for it today. I am cutting, you can hear it in the background, I'm cutting the stars finally after a week, after 2 weeks of planning these. So cutting the stars, stars will go on next. She's had a flat coat put on. She's looking good with her flat coat. And you know, I'm compelled. I think I am compelled to give her a little bit of a satin coating on the boots and the costume, but not today. Today I'm going to be putting, as soon as the stars are get done plotting, I'm going to stick them down here. Last thing to do really is to put the flashes in. Now, the other thing the flashes do is that they cover up where the decals are going to go. There were decals supposed to go on her wrist that are red, these guys, but they may not be able to go on there because of the where the sparks are. I need to paint those sparks up a little bit with some silver, so I can be doing that while everything else is going on. Okay, we're ready to put the stars on ours, using the back of this box as a reference, and here you go. Here's more evidence. For some reason, I've seen recommendations to paint her fingernails red. Her fingernails are not painted. They may be glossy, and I can put a clear over them, but that's all they are. They're clear painted. So I'm going to start with the larger ones, and then work down to fill in the small ones where I've got room. And it's, let's see. Oh, and I did take the opportunity to put some iridescent over the bodice and the shorts again, because I just like the satiny look. Okay, we've got one there. We've got, and I'm starting with the large size first. We've got one there, and the points seem to be heading towards the leg openings. We've got similar ones on this side. That's those four. We've got another, so we've got 3 basic sizes here. And you know that might be it for that one. Let's try a smaller one. Smaller one going here. Smaller one going here. And then the smallest ones, I'm just seeing how they're fitting. Smallest one, there's one up here. There is a medium-sized one about here. There are 2 more medium-sized ones. There. And center seam there. And another large one here. And smaller ones up around the waist here. And it looks like another one right there. Medium-sized one here. Small one up next to it. Another small one. Let's put in, whoops, that stuck to my thumb, which meant I had the adhesive up instead of down. And we're going to put one right there. Looks like there's a smaller one down in the unmentionable areas. We'll put some down there. Okay. Another large one up there. Start wrapping around the side here. Then we're just going to go randomly nuts here. Trying to keep the impression of what's going on without being so retentive about making sure that they are the right way up and in the exact spot. I think we're getting the idea here. Do I have any pictures of the back side? Da 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 da. These are all on the front. Yeah, without digging up an episode and putting it on there, I think I can just extrapolate how these are going to look. I'll put one there. We know that the coverage is very much the same as the front. Okay, I've only got a few of the very large ones left, so let's be a little kinder about where those are going. That's part of what I do on these template sets, is I need to make sure that I've got enough of a given part. So we do that, and I think there's room for one more up here, and then one in the center. And we got one more for that cheek. Now we can fill in smaller ones. Okay, so now we've got the big ones, and let's put some tiny stars on. And this is what I like better than doing decals, is that these are automatically dry. They're not going to yellow. They're not going to silver. If I don't like it, I can pick it up and move it easy. I don't have to get a messy glass of water out and, you know, get all the decaling accoutrements out. Let's see, I think there's room for a medium-sized one there. Let's see. Yeah, medium-sized one there. Small one there. Small one up here. There. Oh, it's getting in camera. There you go. I got to put a couple of small ones down in here, and we'll be good. Now that we've got that out of the way, I can glue down her magic lasso, and that's pretty much the last thing. And I cut the pin off of that because I didn't like the way it was hanging. So I need to get the CA out. Put a little touch of CA here. Okay, we're just going to hold that in here for a few minutes, a few seconds rather. Okay, I don't have time to wait for this, so I'm going to drop a kicker on that. And I say drop because this is usually the time that I'll spray something with kicker and cause an ugliness that ruins the whole thing. There. Okay, we're going to let that dry. Prop her up. Close this up. The last thing to do is to put the ricochets on the wrists, and we'll be done. And here is the lovely Wonder Woman with her spark deflecting things going. Let me put a background behind that so that you can see without being distracted by the paint behind it. But there you go. Sparks off the wrists, pants full of stars. There you go. Okay, so here we go. I've been trying to find a backdrop that I can put figures in front of that isn't exactly the space backdrop, because these don't really belong with a space backdrop. But I wanted to find some nice neutral color. So there you go. There are the ghoulies, and the addition today is the name plaque with the little lamp, the skull lamp going, flickering. But that's the ghoulies, and then not a ghoulie but no less groovy is Wonder Woman. Pull that out of the way and put her, there you go. You will forgive the lack of painted base there, but that's my Sew It Figures collection. I think I'm going to put Wonder Woman with my 66 Batman figures. I think that would make a nice collection. But in the fine tradition of the Groovy Goolies, meet Josie and the Pussycats, or meet Sabrina the Teenage Witch, or the Warner Brothers characters, which was a really strange episode where they were actually in the same frame with everybody but Bugs Bunny. You can have the Groovy Goolies meet Wonder Woman. And that, dear friends, is where we're going to finish it. This has been 2 weeks of 8 figures. Don't worry, next week, I'm already thinking about next month because next month is Wonderfest. Next week, we will be back into the depths of space. I've got a spaceship all lined up that is unlike any spaceship you've probably ever seen. So I'll leave you tantalized with that little tidbit. So until next week, y'all be good to each other, be safe, be smart. Be back next time. And be at Wonderfest if you can. I'd love to see you.